Sex is the life force energy that runs through us all. Can you use sexual energy for your spiritual evolution? Or perhaps for emotional healing? Is it even possible? Clinical sexologist Dr. Martha Tarlee will explore all these and more on Eros Evolution on OMTimes Radio.
Hi, this is Dr. Tanginika Cuascud, and I'm calling in for Dr. Martha Tarlee. And this is a show about sexuality and sexual liberation. The title of the show today is going to be Beaten to the Top, How to Turn Adversity into Success. When Martha asked me to be on the show today, she is actually traveling on vacation, very well deserved. She asked me what I wanted to talk about, and I immediately thought about a topic that is very dear to me, and some news that I had come across recently, although these events happened a long time ago. I was talking to my sister, who is 3 years older than me, last week, and although she is almost in her 50s, she confessed to me that when she was little, she was sexually molested and sexually abused by people that we knew in our circle, different people at different times. However, I am the youngest, but I knew those people very well. And I started to think after I came out of my shock, I suspected that something had been going on with my sister regarding some history of sexual trauma. However, she had never opened up to me. And I started thinking, how can somebody live with this burden for such a long time? But most importantly, what can we do to liberate ourselves from that burden, even after we have held it in for so long, and turn it into a powerful force? And that's what I want to talk about today. How do we take those adverse events in our lives, whether they are sexual? In this case, I opened up with the events that were experienced by my sister. However, how do we take any negative force in our lives, any negative events in our lives, and we turn this into opportunities to become more successful, to become stronger, and to become something greater than what we were before? I am not a stranger to adversity. I also have a story to tell that probably did not start in the best of terms. I am sure that all of us at any given point in our lives have suffered from the devastating effects of events that were beyond our control, that happened long time ago, but that still haunt us in some way, that have probably defined who we are today, and that are probably still dictating what we do, how we operate, how we go about our lives, and the outcomes of our actions even today. So I am here to share, and I am here to tell you that whatever happened in your past, whatever that was, and as horrible as that may have been, there is always a lesson to be learned. There is always a teaching to be taught moving forward, and there's always a horizon in which we have the power to control what comes next in our lives. As I began explaining, my sister, who has always been kind of on the quiet side, I have always been more outspoken, she always held something inside, and I could tell when we were growing up that there was something that she was not telling. When I was about 8 years old, she must have been about 11, I remember we were sitting in our beds in our room, in a very tiny room that we shared in our native island of Puerto Rico. And she told me something that, although at that moment I did not understand, years later, when I became an adult, those words started resonating within me again, and I applied a meaning to them that left me frozen. She had told me, or she had shared with me, something that in her innocent 11 years old way of speech denoted some form of sexual abuse that had happened to her. But she didn't say it that way, and obviously, me being 3 years younger, I did not necessarily understand at that point. When I was in my early 20s, for some reason, I remembered the words that my sister told me. And I was petrified, and I said, oh, my God, this person that is within our family circle, that is very, very close to us, he actually did something wrong to my sister. I was thinking more on the lines of probably sexual molestation, sexual assault, some form of sexual abuse. I have to confess that I never confronted my sister with my suspicion. It was not until last week when she read a story that I had published for a magazine that I used to write for, in which I account my history of sexual abuse with somebody that we knew. And she approached me, and she actually asked me, she said, I am very surprised. I did not know until I read your story online. And she asked me, what happened to you? And she said, something happened to me as well. My immediate reaction when she told me was, I already knew. And she said, how can you know? I have never told a soul. I have never told anybody. Never told our mother, our father, never told her husband, never told her best friend. She had kept that secret inside. And I said, there's a way, I know. I did not give her the details of the little story that she told me when we were little girls sitting on our bed in our room. But I knew. I told her my side of the story, and she confessed that the same person who had molested me sexually had also molested her. And at that time, she also mentioned that something else happened with somebody else that we knew. And apparently that event was much more grave than the first. My sister is almost in her 50s, as I said before, and these events have haunted her since then. She expressed to me that she carries enormous shame and guilt because of what happened when she was a little girl. Unlike me, she'd internalized that the events that happened to her were her fault, that somehow, although she was young, she was defenseless, she was vulnerable, and these events were beyond her control, she was responsible for them. That somehow she had invited these events to happen unto her, and that she was guilty of a terrible crime. Now, I do not know necessarily how sexual crimes are perceived around the globe. I have the suspicion that it's pretty homogeneous. In our culture, I am of Hispanic descent. As I said before, I come from Puerto Rico. It's an island in the Caribbean. There is a very negative perception towards sexual abuse, but especially when this was happening in the 70s. It was believed that whoever was the victim somehow was the culprit of these events, that somehow this person, regardless of their age, their social status, their neighborhood, where they have been growing up, their parents, that somehow this person must have known and must have done something to invite these unwanted and unjustified sexual advances onto themselves. I think this is a perception that is still shared probably pretty much around the globe, unfortunately. And my sister still believed that until we had our conversation last week. Needless to say, I was very sad to know that my sister not only carried this dark secret within herself, but that she also felt that somehow she had been the responsible one for these events to happen unto her. And I will tell you more about the story when we come back.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hi, I'm Kelly Fox, host and astrologer of The Astrology Show. Each week, I'll give you access to the current transits, which are a valuable tool that provide astrological information to help unlock the potential each of us has. Understanding the stars can help steer us in the right direction to make better informed choices. So if you're wondering what's going to happen in your week ahead, be sure to tune in to The Astrology Show for guidance. Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
Every 2 minutes, an American is sexually assaulted. The majority of victims know their attacker. It could be your friend, your neighbor, or someone you met at a party. If you said no, it's rape, and it's a crime. This is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Call the National Sexual Assault Hotline today at 1-800-656-HOPE or visit RAIN.org. That's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
This is Dr. Tanginika Cuascud. I'm also a clinical sexologist. I am in Dallas, Texas, in the United States, and I am today pitching in for Dr. Martha Tarley. She is on a well-deserved vacation. I hope she's having a lot of fun. And today's topic is beaten to the top, how to turn adversity into success. The story that I was telling you before was a story of something that happened within my family, something that happened to both my sister and me. And it is a story of sexual abuse initially, but I also want to empower you, as I have been empowered, to turn this and any other adversity into an opportunity for success. When we paused to go on a break, I was telling you about my sister Lily, who had held in a dark secret all her life, her story of sexual abuse, sexual molestation, and how much grief this cost her. And I just learned about this news last week on a conversation that I had with her in which she finally opened up. The process of opening up, and I'm going to use my sister as an example, takes a lot of courage. So when someone opens up to say horrible things happened to me, especially when they happened early in childhood, when there's no clear notion of boundaries, when children don't really know what is accepted and what is not. And when all these events can lead to a lot of confusion. Certainly, that was the case with my sister and I. Contrary to my sister, though, I never internalized that these events were my fault. I was also sexually molested. But I never thought that I brought this onto me. But my sister believed it. Something very important that happened to my sister, and I would like to share it with all of you, is that when she opened up to tell a trusted adult, in this case our mother became very angry, and she scolded my sister. She punished her. She spanked her for having done something terrible. Somehow the actions of my mother, and potentially her words, told my sister, let my sister know that somehow all these events that had happened to her were her fault. That at her preteen years, I do not know when this first sexual event happened with my sister, but she was a little girl. When this happened, somehow my mother thought and delivered the message to my sister that this had been my sister's fault. Now, obviously, we love our mother tremendously. She was raised in a different time, and one may argue that she did not know better. Our mother has passed, so I could not go back to our mother and ask for an explanation and express to her my feelings of sadness over what I had learned regarding her response to my sister's allegations. I could not go back to her to tell her that her words were hurtful, that they were unjustified, that they were unfair, but especially that they had harmed my sister tremendously. I could not go back in time and fix it. And I have to confess that I became very angry at my mother. I thought, how can you think that a little girl is responsible for unwanted sexual advances from adult men, from trusted adult men that you and my father have allowed into our world because they have family ties with us and because of their proximity to us? How can you blame us little girls of our own misfortunes? And so I did. I became very, very angry. And I went back to that time and I cried for my sister. I cried for the feelings of sadness and despair that my sister may have felt during that time, and that I knew that my sister is still having up to this day. I cried because I couldn't protect my sister from this harm. And I cried because I rose above my situation, but my sister had not up to that point. So after I started thinking about this and how my mother was capable of inflicting so much more pain onto my sister after these events happened, I had to start with my own process of forgiveness towards my mother, because actually she did not know any better. So she did not do this because she knew better or because she thought she knew better. She actually did it because she did not know. She did it because our mother was also the victim of sexual abuse in her youth, and she was conflicted with these messages also within herself. So when it was my sister's turn to live this, and then my own, she basically just regurgitated the messages that she had learned from when she was younger and when these things happened to her as well. And I started thinking about something very important in the process of forgiveness. And I think this is the first step for us, or the second, I must say, for us to get over adversity and turn it into an opportunity for growth. First of all, we need to recognize that something horrible happened, but that it was beyond our control. And if it was within our control, then we need to also recognize that. So the first step is awareness. And definitely my sister came to that point last week in our conversation. And I'm hoping that her healing will begin moving forward. I had a different kind of awareness. And after I started thinking about the actions of our mother towards my sister and towards me in a different set of events related to the sexual abuse that I sustained, I started to go through the process of forgiveness. And one cannot overcome adversity, I don't think, if you don't have forgiveness. And forgiveness is not something that you award the other person. I think that's what is the most difficult for people. How can I forgive somebody who has done me so wrong? How can I exonerate from any wrongdoing, from any faults, somebody who has hurt me so severely, somebody who has marked my life so negatively? How can I say, I forgive you, and basically with my words pretend and act as if though nothing had happened? And I do not think that's forgiveness. I don't think forgiveness is something that you pour or that you award the other person. I think some forgiveness is liberation of yourself from the aches and the burden and the turmoil of whatever actions conflicted you and that were probably caused by this person or brought onto you by this person, and that you can finally say, I liberate myself from projecting onto you my pain. I am going to free myself and give myself an opportunity to live free of the expectation that you could have done things differently in the past. We cannot go back to the past and change the circumstances. We can only live in the present and hope that with our present actions, our future outcomes will be different than what we got before. That's the only thing we can actually ask for, and we can wish for, and we can work towards. So that's how I started looking at things regarding our mother. In my analysis, in my assessment of what happened and why my mother had acted so horribly, was the realization that in a very twisted way, in a very probably strange way for most, our mother was trying to protect us from the pain that she endured and from the pain of the markings of these events that we were going to carry moving forward according to her own perception. In our culture, this is Hispanic culture, Puerto Rico, and I am assuming, and probably I dare to assert that all over the world, a woman that has been a victim or a child that has been a victim of sexual abuse is a person that is scarred for life. And if these thoughts that this was somehow your fault, that we have brought this onto ourselves, permeate in the society at large, we have to carry the burden, kind of the scarlet letter, for the rest of our life. And our mother wanted to prevent that for us, again, in a very twisted and strange way. Our mother wanted this to go away, for us to be our own defenders, for us to be the own breaks of these situations from ever happening to us again, so we did not have to carry this burden for the rest of our lives. So I saw this as the strategy that our mother used to keep us away from this harm that would haunt us for the rest of our lives. And this is how I started to go about the process of forgiveness. As I said before, our mother is no longer with us, so I cannot have a conversation with her regarding this topic. I have assured my sister over and over again that when she was young, when we were little girls, there was no way we could have prevented this from happening. And even today, well into our 40s, almost 50 years old for my sister, we cannot necessarily prevent all the wrongdoings that will come to us. But what we can control is what we do with what has been given to us moving forward. We can only take these events, learn from them, be empowered by them, and make sure that not only we learn, but we teach others that there's a different way of thinking, that there's a different way of doing things, that there's a different way to give support to somebody who has gone through adversity. This is Dr. Tanginika Cuascud. I'm here for Dr. Marta Tara-Lee, and I'll be back after this brief message.
Free your mind with OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hi, this is Julie Geigel.
And I'm Susan Schuler.
And I'm Carrie Ann Larson.
And we are
the Psychic Angel Channelers
from Angel Talk Tuesday.
Tune in every week at 10 a.m. Eastern on OMTimesRadio.com.
The angels have heard your call and are here to help.
Are you ready to receive?
Bathe in a beautiful vibrational frequency to help you heal, expand, and remember your magnificence with Angel Talk Tuesday.
What's up? This is Brad and Mike from Lincoln Park for LifeBeat, the music industry fights AIDS. Listen up, times are tough and you get a lot of things thrown your way. If you're being pressured to have sex and you're not ready, then say no. If you're having sex, be smart and use protection. Respect yourself and protect yourself.
For more information, call the National AIDS Hotline at 1-800-342-AIDS or log on to www.lifebeat.org.
Hi, this is Dr. Tanginika Cuascud, and I'm pitching in for Dr. Marta Tara-Lee. She's on a well-deserved vacation in a fabulous place. I hope she's having lots of fun. Let's send her lots of good vibes so she can return with a lot of enlightenment and a lot of good information to share, as she always does. I'm very happy to be here sharing a story that I have titled, Beaten to the Top, How to Turn Adversity into Success. When we left for that brief pause, I was talking about some elements that I think are very crucial for not only overcoming adversity, but turning adversity into opportunities for success. I've had my share of adversity in my life, and life never comes without hardship, and I think that's true for everybody. There's nobody in the world, there's no one in the world who is free of adversity, of challenges, of threats to their personal safety and security at times. Not everybody lives in a safe place, and even in the safest of places, there can always be things that go wrong. There's always negativity that can come our way, even if we are not calling for it. But nothing has to remain negative for the rest of our lives. And I have taken this story of my sister and her story of sexual abuse kind of as my canvas today to get this point across. As I explained before, my sister had kept this dark secret within herself for a long time. She never told anybody her history of sexual abuse that had happened between or within our family. And I'm hoping that when she opened up to me last week in our conversation, the healing process has begun for her. My healing process is always ongoing, and that is something else that I want to convey. When we talk about healing, sometimes we think that there's a beginning and there's an end. And I said that before we can even start the process, we have to recognize, we have to become aware that something happened, either with beyond our control or something that we maybe could have done differently. We all make mistakes, and it doesn't have to be somebody forcing themselves onto us, onto our private spaces, onto our world. It can be things that we do every day, and sometimes we just make mistakes. We're only human. When we become aware of what has happened in our wrongdoings or whatever wrong was done unto us, we can begin to look at things from a different perspective. It is very important that we do not remain in victimhood. I always make the distinction that I have been the victim of, but I am not a victim. So let me repeat this. I have been the victim of, but I am not a victim. I have been the victim of things that have happened to me beyond our control or beyond my control throughout my life. But I do not live in victimhood. I do not go about blaming others for my current condition. I do not become complacent and just sit down and cry until miraculously something happens and change happens outside of me. Change cannot happen outside of me. Change has to happen within me for my world to change. So the way in which I face adversity is going to dictate a lot of the outcome. So I cannot control necessarily the events of others, especially the attitudes and behaviors of others, but I can always control my own behavior. I can always control my own attitudes. I can always control what I do moving forward with the information that I have right now. When we're talking about sexual trauma, for instance, it is very important that we recognize, that we realize, that we believe in our very core that this is in no way something that we brought onto ourselves, that there was no skirt too short, that there was no cleavage too low, that there was no one drink too many, that nobody, no one has the right to come into our private space and violate it. We cannot give our power away thinking that we were the ones that were responsible for this. Something that we must all learn, and we should have probably learned it when we were very little, maybe in kindergarten, was respect for others. Unfortunately, not everybody learns to be respectful. So we are going to be probably the targets of some unwanted behaviors throughout our lives. But we have to remain strong and believe that this is not something that we brought onto ourselves, that we are not at fault for what happened, and that the perpetrators, the ones that abused us, bear the responsibility of their actions. I told you before that our mother blamed my sister, and eventually, in another instance, she blamed me for something similar that happened to me. I never believed it. For some reason, I never believed it. I did feel very hurt by the words of my mother when she told me that I should have not let my uncle kiss me in a certain way. She was looking from a distance, and she saw what was happening. She did not stop him. And then she came to me and yelled at me for what happened instead of standing up for me. So at that age, I realized that I had to stand up for myself. But no child should have to go through this. We should be there to protect and support our children, especially when they tell us that something like this has happened. Something that happens when children come to us with this kind of information is that many adults around them don't believe them, or the adults around them want to protect the perpetrator. I have seen this a lot in my conferences with women. I have seen how some women come and they come forward in a circle and they say, well, my cousin has sexually molested my daughter, but I do not want to cause any troubles unto my cousin. I don't want him to be in trouble with the police. And this puts children at a disadvantage. And this is just not fair, and it's not right. When we see injustice happening, we need to stand up for what's right. And we need to have the strength to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. And we need to be brave. We need to be empowered to know that we also have a voice. Even if these horrific things have never happened to us, we also bear some of the responsibility for the outcome of those victims of these horrible events. We have a voice, we can use it. We have a voice that we can use for advocacy. We have a voice that we can use to denounce things of this nature that happen in society. We have a voice that we can use to eradicate these ailments from society. And so we have to be aware not only of the things that happen to us, but we also have to be aware that these things happen in the world, and we are also responsible for creating a society in which abuse is eliminated, in which victims of abuse are supported 100%, and they're not left to feel that they were somehow responsible and they brought this onto themselves. So we already talked about awareness and being open for that change. We already talked about forgiveness, and I would like to talk about a new belief system. I would like for all of us to think about instances in our lives in which we have taken the side of the wrong. We have all done it. We, again, are humans and we make mistakes. At some point in our lives, I can assure probably everybody has thought, maybe vaguely, maybe for a second, but they have thought that maybe the victim was to blame, that maybe there was something that we could have done differently to have these events not happen to us. And when you think that way, you are also promoting the problem. Now, we're talking about overcoming adversity and making it into opportunities for success. And I'm taking this story to depict that. How can we change the world? How can we turn this sad story and many sad stories around the globe that pertain to sexual abuse and some other wrongdoings and turn them into opportunities for success? I think the first thing that we need to do is ditch old belief systems that do not serve us right and adopt new ones that are more compassionate, that are more empathetic, in which we know that we have the power to create our own future in spite of whatever happened in the past. To know that what happened in the past does not define us as persons. Because somebody has been the victim of sexual abuse doesn't mean that this person is a bad person, doesn't mean that this person is a magnet for bad things to happen, doesn't mean that this person is flawed or defective in any way. And we have to start promoting and getting that message across. It's very important, especially for somebody who has gone through horrific events. And we need to be part of that change that we want to see in the world. This is not a cliche. It is actually true. That change starts within us. We need to become light in the darkness. We need to become voice in the silence. We need to become peace in the turmoil. We need to lend our hand to those who are suffering so we can offer our strength to pull them and to let them know that they can overcome whatever it is that happened to them in the past. And we cannot promote the belief that this person did anything wrong or that this person will be scarred and defined for the rest of his or her life because of what happened. And I will continue to tell you some other keys to turning adversity into success in any kind of adversity when we come back to discuss Dr. Tanginika Cuascud for Dr. Martha Tara Lee. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Come heal yourself. What is healing? Healing is nothing but connecting with your all-knowing higher self that already has solutions to all your problems and is always there to guide you. Through this show, we help you to connect with that you are and tap into that innate potential you have to transform your life and fly high. Please join me, your host Monica Goyal, every Sunday, 7 p.m. Pacific. Namaste.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
To get in the way before it happens.
To get a friend home safe.
And to not blame the victim.
It's on us.
To look out for each other.
To not look the other way.
It's on us to stand up.
To step in.
To take responsibility.
It's on us, all of us,
to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
This is Dr. Tanginika Cuascud calling from Dallas, Texas in the United States, and I am pitching in today for Dr. Martha Tara Lee. She's on a well-deserved vacation in a fabulous place. Thank you so much, Dr. Tara Lee, for allowing me to be in your space today and sharing this story with the audience. I hope that you all take something from this story and learn something and implement some of the strategies in your everyday life. Beaten to the top, how to turn adversity into success. Let me tell you how I came up with this title for the show today. It's actually kind of a title of a series of conferences that I do. When I was little, I was severely not only sexually abused, but also physically abused by a stepmother. And I should not be alive today. I sustained life-threatening wounds and injuries that she inflicted. I had a broken skull, I had a broken arm, broken legs, and many injuries all over my body. I was 2 years old when this happened. I still remember some of those events. But I rose from every adversity, and I have to say that those events have definitely made me a stronger individual. So although I do not wish anything of what happened to me onto anybody, and certainly definitely not onto any child in any part of the world, the truth is that we are all probably vulnerable to some sort of adversity at some point in our lives. There's nobody in the world who's free of adversity, or at least who's not vulnerable to suffer from the effects of being the target of abuse, of being the target of negative events that happen. What we can do and what we can manage is how do we come across and how do we cross that bridge onto the other side and what happens next. I always say that I cannot prevent, I cannot change, I cannot avoid what happened to me in my past. I cannot change what happened to my sister. I cannot change what happened within our family. And what happened within our family, unfortunately, is something that happens in many, many families all over the world. But what we can do is manage that and turn that into energy that is going to fuel us and propel us to a better place moving forward. I truly believe that during adversity, you can muster your strength, and you can not only know how strong you are, but you can actually become stronger, especially when you brace through it and you come through it alive. And certainly that happened to me, and being alive is something that I do not take for granted and that I cherish every day of my life. I was talking to you before, and I was sharing that being aware of what happened to us and accepting what happened to us is kind of the first step for us to overcome adversity. We have to also stop blaming ourselves and stop victimizing ourselves. Probably somebody else did a very good job at that. And we need to rise above our condition and potentially ditch an old belief system that keeps us in the victim mode and acquire one that will allow us to be empowered by what happened. When my sister told me her story about sexual abuse last week, I felt very sad for many reasons. But one of the things that made me very sad was the fact that she felt that she had to silence her voice, that she felt that she could not tell anybody because she was at fault. I tell my story, and my story is in the internet for those who want to read it. And I am not proud of what happened to me. I do not say it out of pride. I say it because it happened to me, but I was not at fault. This is not something that I brought onto me, and I should not be ashamed of what happened to me, and I will not be ashamed of what happened to me. I was vulnerable, I was young, I was defenseless, and this should have not happened, but it did. And I am not going to carry the burden of being ashamed of something that happened to me. Those who committed these acts should be the ones who are ashamed, should be the ones walking down the street with their heads down. I am not going to put my head down because of what happened to me. In our case, everybody involved in this equation is already dead. So they have already transitioned, and I'm hoping that they have transitioned to a better place, to a place of light and wisdom. We are left here to live with the aftermath. I have chosen to take these events, become a clinical sexologist, help people who carry sexual shame, sexual guilt, who carry the burden of thinking that probably they're not worthy of healthy relationships within themselves and with others because of the negative events that happened in the past. Or just people who have maybe or perceive that they have a different sexuality and they do not know how to express it, and they think they're going to be shunned from society because of who they are sexually, or people who have a different identity than the one that they have been living by, and they feel that they will never be accepted in their true form. I have chosen to take my story of adversity and turn it into a story of triumph and help those in need of some support, some light, some guidance, to help them also cross that bridge from adversity to success. Whatever their definition of success is, whether it is to live freely as a lesbian or gay or bisexual man, to start a transition and live as a transsexual male or female, or to practice BDSM with a partner without the guilt or the fear of being judged and being put away by their partners, and many, many other doubts and fears that people have when it comes to their sexuality. I have come to learn that we all carry some story of sexual shame, whether we have expressed it to others or we're still carrying it inside. We all carry something. We all think that we are flawed in some way, especially when it comes to our sexuality. And so I have chosen to be the one to allow people to have that sacred and safe space for them to express themselves and realize that they're just fine the way they are. And if they need help and support managing whatever form of sexuality they have, that I'm here for them in a supportive role. I have also become an advocate for sexual rights, and I have become a sexual health educator to start at least attempting at making a dent on the sexual ignorance and fear that permeates all our societies. In my case, not only the United States, but also all over the world, since I reach audiences with programs like this one, and through my writings, I can impart some knowledge, hopefully some wisdom, onto others, and start eradicating these ailments from our backyards, from our schoolyards, from our families, and from our souls. We have all been inflicted with pain at some point in our lives, but we do not have to remain in pain. I've heard many times that pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. And I have come to learn that. And if there's anything that you can take from my story today, and thank you so much for allowing me to share, is that you don't have to live in suffering. Yes, we all feel pain. We're human. We all make mistakes. We're human. We have all been victims of something unwanted, something unwarranted, something unfair, something unjustified. And we will probably continue to be. We will probably be faced with more adversity as we go into our lives. But we do not have to take a victim role. We do not have to live in suffering. We can be empowered with knowledge, with tools to overcome that past, not leave it behind, because we don't necessarily leave it behind. Healing, as I began to tell you, doesn't necessarily begin and ends. I think healing is ongoing. When we're healing from something, we may never finish the healing, but if we are always ongoing on the healing, we are on the right track. That's what we can strive for, to live in the light, to also be the voice of others, to become beacons of light in this world in which there is a lot of darkness still to be battled with and to be defeated. I would like for you to examine your lives and think about all the instances in which you can make a difference and you can be not only empowered for yourself, but also empowered for others. Be the power of the adversity that rose and brought you to a state of success. Thank you very much. This is Dr. Tanginika Cuascud. You can find me at drtangie.com. You can connect with me on Facebook, on Twitter, and through Dr. Marta Tarali, who's on vacation. We wish her a very good time, and we welcome her when she comes back. Thank you very much for listening.